just a quick one, because there was quite a bit of tweet talk about this today, so I thought I'd address it on the programme. A listener got in touch with us today on Twitter, and when listeners get in touch with us about potential guests, we always extend them the courtesy of a reply. And our listener asked us, would we consider getting George Galloway on the programme? So I mentioned that he'd been invited previously, but that he'd declined. Now, he tweeted back immediately. He spends a bit of time on Twitter, no harm in that. And he said, well, I did agree to come on recently, but you declined, Richie, he said. Now, I pointed out that Claire, our producer, had asked him because she didn't know that I'd asked him previously, and he declined, citing David Icke as the reason why he would never come on the programme. So at the time I said to him, that's a bit silly, but I have a lot of opinions and I reserve the right to mine. You have the right to yours, so we'll leave it go at that. Now, Claire didn't know any of this, and several weeks later, she got in touch with him when his film The Killings of Tony Blair came out and invited him on, and he said yes, immediately. And God love Claire, I put her in a bad situation because Claire said to me, right, you're going to have Galloway to talk about Blair and also, maybe about Brexit. And I said, well, no, he's not coming on the programme because of what happened. So that's why he hasn't been on the programme and he won't be on the programme. When he accepted Claire's invitation to come on, he didn't do anything wrong, but it was a bit cheeky, really, having said he'd never have anything to do with David Icke. I think David made reference to this at the time, the childishness of it and the silliness of it before the European Union referendum. So he won't be on the programme. He was given the opportunity to come on and flatly refused, rather rudely at the time, and that was his decision then. And he certainly won't be coming on the programme to promote his film The Killings of Tony Blair, which is a bit of a shame because it isn't a bad film. I watched it. It's interesting. It wouldn't tell me anything new because I've spent years reading about stalking Blair online and through the media, alternative and commercial. But for a lot of people who might be really unsure of not unsure, but who wouldn't know the sheer weight of the malevolence and the mendacity and the criminality of Blair, it's a film worth watching, and I recommend it. But Galloway's a strange man. He's a strange man. And it brings me to what I wanted to talk about. And I'm going to run out of time here because I was coughing and spluttering. But I wanted to talk about ego in the independent media and the cult of celebrity. Now, it isn't something new. I've touched on this before and I've delved into this before and stuck my toe into the waters of this before. And some of you take it on board. Some of you don't like it. Some of you say that we're all in this together, we're all part of a big team, why don't we all pull together because we're all fighting the same tyrannical system, which of course we are. The last part of it is absolutely true. But we're not all in this together. There are a variety of reasons why people choose to do programs like this, to write articles about things that appear or are discussed on programs like this, or make videos. A number of things. And the cult of celebrity and enjoying the attention is a fascinating one, really. And I'm guessing that people who listen to and watch the independent media, who maybe have never worked in and around a newspaper, a radio show or TV, it's maybe something that might pass people by. I think a lot of people, when they set out with good intentions. I think I could probably get away with saying most people, when they set out to talk about and disseminate information in the independent media, I think they get into it with good intentions because they've seen something that has motivated them to change their thinking and to try and share that with people, to try and get other people to consider what they have learned and what they want to share. But there comes a time when some people, now this is right across the media, whether it's commercial media, whether it's national media, or whether it's independent media, a lot of people, and I mean a lot, begin to enjoy the attention. And they begin to enjoy the attention a little bit too much. And that takes the focus then. For them, that becomes their reason to exist, to build upon the cult of their own celebrity. And the ego begins to expand. And what you begin to notice is that they become the story. All of a sudden, they have inserted themselves into the narrative. And the people of Aleppo, or the people who have been abused by VIP paedophiles or politicians, those people are no longer people whose stories need to be heard, but those people become props for the celebrity independent media content creator or the celebrity truther. And this is what happens. And it becomes out of control. It gets out of control very quickly. You see them launching fan pages for themselves, calling themselves public figures, tweeting selfies, ridiculous selfies that have nothing to do with any issue, any subject for discussion, any news story of the day. And when they talk about any issue, they insert themselves in the story. As I said, I'm repeating that, but it's important. And there can be no story without their involvement. And that eventually migrates or moves on to there can't be any solution to this problem without their involvement. Now, a woman called Sonia Poulton, who I had the grave misfortune to meet at TPV Television in London, is a classic case of this. Somebody whom I think may very well have begun at some stage with good intentions, with the intentions of highlighting or spotlighting a cause and giving a platform to people who otherwise wouldn't have had a voice, but then got sucked into the me cult of celebrity. I'm important. You know? It's massive. And people don't see it. And these people develop a very serious case of self-importance. And you often hear them doing interviews. And the interviews are staggering. You might remember when Ken O'Keefe was interviewed by me about the allegations made against him. And he wouldn't shut up talking about what he does and has done for humanity. And he must have repeated this maybe a dozen or more times during the interview. And it staggered me, really, that it wouldn't occur to him just how ludicrous, how damaging, how silly, how hurtful that was to him to say that. What I do for humanity, what I do for humanity. Now, I've worked at every level of radio, commercial, national, independent, and you could say alternative, whatever you want. And I met people like this. I mean, I remember going out on staff dues, and presenters would embarrass themselves when they were drunk. You know, if they wanted to get into a nightclub and the nightclub was full, it was a case of, do you know who I am? Kind of a thing. And this is rampant, and it is rife in the independent media. This level of ego, I've never seen anything like it in my life. I never saw radio as glamorous. You know, I started off doing late night radio. I worked at every level. I never felt I was important or well known. Then and now I became kind of embarrassed when somebody would recognise my voice and say hello to me. I'm the same today. Now, I'm no saint, me. I've got plenty of faults. Anybody who knows me will testify to that. But if my fiancée was here now, she'd tell you, when we meet people for the first time, I make a point of not getting into what I do or what I have done, because I'm more interested in the person I've just met, what they have to say, where they've been, and what they think about things, what they think about life, what they think about what's in the news, what they think about anything. I've always seen the job of a producer and a presenter to be the conduit between the listener and the guest. Now, the guest is coming on to programs like this because they've got some important information to be shared with the listener. My job is to ask the questions that you want asked. Don't always do that because I'm not perfect, but that should be my motivation. Challenge when necessary, but otherwise create the space for the guest and then just manage that delicately through the time that you have with that guest. And I'm being told all the time by people who know me that I'm very hard on some independent media creators. And I forget they haven't had the experience and the grounding that I've been lucky to have. And while I'm blessed with a lot of patience in most aspects of life, again, my fiance probably would disagree with that, in this arena, I have no patience whatsoever. Because I'm sick to death of the narcissists and the celebrity truthers who have created a truther industrial complex. Sick to death of watching them bleed people dry at the, what I call comic, and this is what I call, it's just me, I'm not speaking for anybody else, Comic Con type truth conferences. Because so many so-called truthers see disenfranchised people as a means to an end. They do nothing to try to make the information more accessible to those who reject it. Now, this is the most serious aspect of what I'm trying to get across here. I said to David Icke 2.5 years ago, when David suggested this program, I said, I hope that somewhere along the line we start talking to and with people who disagree with us or who don't understand some of the things that we think we understand. Because if I'm talking to people who know about David and who know about what's going on and who understand what Archon energy is, who understand what the central banks really are and who's behind them, it's a waste of time. It's a waste of time to do that. That's not to say you don't want people listening to it who understand things, but you're supposed to be trying to reach people who have no understanding of it. And the truthers see disenfranchised people as a cash cow. They do nothing to reach other people. They do nothing. You know, the people who call us conspiracy theorists, I want to reach those people. But why would the celebrity truthers in the truther industrial complex try to reach those people? Those people are no good. You can't make any money out of them. But there's plenty of money to be made in preaching to the choir, in telling people what they want to hear over and over again. And often it is wanton plagiarism. So you have people at truth conferences giving information that came from researchers over the last 30, 40 years and passing that information off as their own. There's a lot of money in truth. It's the truth, the truther industrial complex, and it's like the gold rush days of the 19th century. A brilliant video cast by David Icke on this, not on that specifically, but on fake news and clickbait. The trailer is at davidicke.com. Go and check it out. There's something else I wanted to talk about as well. And I was reluctant to talk about this, but I'm going to do it anyway, because I'm going to trust that the people involved understand two things. One, that I haven't set myself up as some sort of sheriff of the independent media. Absolutely bloody not. I am no better or no worse at what I do than anybody else. I have no delusions of grandeur about my abilities or about my success or anything. It's important that I get that out there. I'm not the police of the independent media. I'm a mouthy paddy with a lot of opinions, some of which are ridiculous at times, but many of which are sharp and on the money. I want to talk about embedding. Now, I remember being lectured at Salford University many years ago by Dr. Carol O'Reilly when I did TV and radio at Salford. And she was an amazing woman. Her thinking was more along the lines of the guests who come on this program to talk about politics. Very sharp, very, I'd hate to say left of centre, but she had a very, very open and, I suppose, I just leave it at open. She had an incredibly open mind when it came to what might be going on in the world and why the Iraq war might have happened and who might have been behind that and why. And she talked to us about embedding. She talked about how after the Vietnam War, the military-industrial complex said, well, we can't have the sort of reporting again that we have had in the Vietnam War. We can't have it. Because when the Vietnam War was raging and over 50,000 Americans were killed and millions of Vietnamese were murdered. There were reporters for the major networks in Vietnam actually telling the truth about what was going on. Hence the public's reaction to the war in Vietnam. And afterwards they said, look, we're going to have to stop that. And embedding came from the military-industrial complex. What will we do, lads? Well, if we have journalists working under our protection, if they travel into war zones and into conflict zones with us, we'll be able to manage the narrative. We'll be able to, almost like a kind of a Stockholm syndrome kind of a thing. You know, the reporter is going to be in awe of the levels of responsibility afforded by that reporter to those Marines and those soldiers, to him or her. So it's going to slant their story. And we saw this through Gulf War I. We certainly saw it in the second Gulf War, in the Iraq War 2003 ongoing. Embedding. It was genius by the military-industrial complex. And I got a whiff of this today. And I'm just going to say this, and I know damn well that what I'm going to say is going to be taken the wrong way, but I'm going to say it anyway. We've had a couple of brilliant women on this programme who've been to Syria and have reported on what they've seen. They've interviewed Syrian people and gotten a different side of the story from them than that which is presented by the commercial and national media in the West. They've done brilliant work. I think they're incredibly talented. I'm going to mention one. I'm going to mention Vanessa Beeley. I think we're talking about very talented people, extraordinary journalists and people with great courage. But I think they've made a massive mistake in aligning themselves with the Russian state media television, RT. I think it's a massive mistake. And I'll explain it in a minute. I think a line has been crossed. I noticed this a lot lately. Vanessa spending a lot of time, 3-4 times a week appearing on RT, and is obviously, who could blame her, taking an appearance fee each time she appears on the programme. Now, I know you'll be screaming at the radio and you'll be saying, well, what difference does it make, Richie? If what Vanessa is saying is true, and by the way, I believe it to be true, what difference does that make? I'll tell you what difference it makes. It goes to the heart of independent journalism and objectivity. How can you turn around to your friend who gets information about Syria from the BBC and say, have a listen to Vanessa there? Well, why would I? She's working for RT, Russian state media. It's hardly objective, is it? There's no answer to that. And the dangers of losing that objectivity and crossing over that line is that you become compromised. And that is the new 21st century way of embedding. Now, I like RT. RT do a lot of good work. I'm in regular contact with them. Regular. They've been in touch with us about the TV show. They've given us access to all their archive material. They're very good. They're very nice. And they've presented a great balance in the whole Syrian attempted coup of Bashar al-Assad by Western forces and intelligence agencies. I like them. But never forget who they are. They are Russian state media. How could Vanessa or anybody else who appears on RT or even Press TV, how would they be able to report on a negative story surrounding the Russian government? Imagine they were to come across information that the Russian military or soldiers operating in the region on behalf of Russia were to do something heinous or do something in contravention of international law. Could they report on that? It's dangerous. It's not good. I'm reminded of Abby Martin, who worked for RT for a time and lost her job because she gave an opinion on the Russia, Ukraine, Crimea, Donbass situation, which didn't suit RT. There was a big row and she left the station. Now, it turned out Abby Martin's opinion, and her reporting on Ukraine and Crimea and Donbass was dreadful. She hadn't a clue what was going on there and who was behind it. She'd never heard of Victoria Nuland or Bob Kagan or what was going on there, or Yatsenyuk or any of these people. But should she have lost her job because she went against the party line? I would say no. This programme goes out on davidicke.com, Fab Radio, and Alternate Current Radio. I bet you there are times when the people at davidicke.com and the other two think, geez, I don't agree with Richie there. I bet you it happens more than once. But they're not going to tell me to feck off. So, don't deify people. Don't do it. And by the way, we're not lumping Vanessa Beeley in or anything like it with the Truth or Industrial Complex. It's just something that occurred to me today. You see people popping up on Russian state television. I think that's a shame that. That's a shame that. Again, we're back to reaching people outside of the independent media who ordinarily wouldn't touch us, wouldn't listen to us, wouldn't have anything to do with us because we're crazy conspiracy theorists. I think Vanessa Beeley is a brilliant journalist. She was terrific on this programme. I think she's crossed the line in aligning herself with RT. And she's not the only one. That's my opinion. I hope anybody listening to this who wants to troll me will remember two things. One, I don't read the trolls. I couldn't give a shit. And two, don't hear what you want to hear. Hear what I said. This is the Richie Allen Show in association with davidicke.com. It's exactly 28 minutes to the top of the hour. Our only guest today is standing by. Let's get her on the show. Very important stuff, this. Back in a minute.